It's bizarre to think that 2 years ago, Jacob Rees-Mogg was the rising star in the Conservative Party to a point where even bookies were putting his name up to be the next Prime Minister. And we're going to go through a New Statesman article that goes over this and essentially what amounts to the complete unravelling of the cult of Jacob Rees-Mogg. And I'm going to put my two penneth in at the end, and I think what potentially Mogg's future could envision. So, it's astonishing to think that scarcely 2 years ago, Jacob Rees-Mogg was briefly the bookies' favourite to become the UK's next Prime Minister. He was the darling of the personality cult called Mogmentum, the star of the Conservative Party conference, and most popular Tory in monthly surveys of party members conducted by the website Conservative Home. It did not matter that he was a caricature of a toff, an MP who still communicated with his constituencies by fountain pen, a Downton Abbey relic who once campaigned on the housing estates of Central Fife with his nanny. He was colourful, entertaining, and a Brexit zealot whom a deranged Conservative Party regarded as a potential saviour following Theresa May's insipid general election performance of 2017. It is unlikely that the leader of the House of Commons would be considered a leadership contender were Boris Johnson to fall today, for the true nature of the man has become increasingly apparent, if not, and it is not pretty. There was his slouching full length along the government front bench during a critical Brexit debate last September, the embodiment of arrogance, disdainful patrician entitlement. There was his use of the Commons privilege to denigrate a hospital consultant, David Nicholl, who had the nerve to warn of a no-deal Brexit could jeopardise vital supply of drugs. There was the assertion that the Grenfell Tower victims should have used their common sense, ignored the fire brigade advice and left the building. Johnson's campaign team wisely excluded him from a general election campaign that targeted disaffected blue-collar workers. On top of that, Rees-Mogg decided to end the virtual arrangements that allowed Parliament to continue working during the coronavirus lockdown and brought MPs back to Westminster on the 2nd of June in apparent defiance of the government's own guidelines. It was a shambles. MPs classified as vulnerable to the coronavirus were disenfranchised because they could not travel. Those who could join a ludicrous kilometre-long line of wasting of what was dubbed the Mogg Conga to vote. MPs of all parties were furious, and the dangers of gathering several hundred politicians from across the country in a single building were dramatically underscored when Alok Sharma, the business secretary, fell ill with suspected coronavirus. He had tested positive, and numerous MPs and ministers with whom he had contact, including the Prime Minister and Chancellor Rishi Sunak, would have to self-isolate. Rees-Mogg's plan was clearly untenable. The government beat a swift retreat, allowing shielded MPs to ask questions remotely and vote by proxy. It is now working on a speedier system of swipe card voting, but Rees-Mogg's stock has taken another hit. He offered various reasons for his rush to bring MPs back. He said that it would improve parliamentary scrutiny and speed the legislative programme, though he was perfectly happy to see Parliament prolonged when it resisted the government's Brexit plans last autumn. He argued that voting while enjoying a sunny walk or watching television does democracy injustice, though disenfranchising MPs altogether clearly does not. He said that MPs should set an example at a time when the government is encouraging the public to return to work, through a YouGov poll showed that only 12% of the public thought MPs needed to be in Westminster to vote. His real motives are almost certainly include the government's greater ability to control backbenchers when they are physically present, and Johnson urgently needed for a vocal support during the Prime Minister's question time. More broadly, the saga showed the inability of the old Etonian, who has everything, to understand the problems of those who do not. A man who boasted that he never changed a nappy, Rees-Mogg has wealth, health, and a nanny for 6 children, 2 Bentleys, and a London townhouse, as well as his 400-year-old Somerset mansion. Many MPs presently have no childcare, rely on public transport, or either use shared flats while in London, or cannot leave home for medical reasons. For all his elaborate courtesy, Rees-Mogg's political career has never been distinguished by compassion for the less fortunate. He has opposed positive discrimination, foreign aid, abortion, the increases in welfare benefits. He supports 0-hour contracts, reduction in corporate and capital gains taxes, restrictions on legal aid, and the notorious bedroom tax on council tenants occupying homes bigger than they need. He's also opposed higher taxes on the rich, a mansion tax on homes consisting of more than 2 million, and a banker's bonus tax, arguing that you alleviate poverty by trickle-down economics. A one-nation Tory, he is emphatically is not. While the economy is reeling from lockdown, he is now engaged in a particularly grotesque betrayal of working people that Johnson's Conservatives profess to champion. Any form of Brexit would endanger their fragile jobs and the overstretched public services on which they rely. The no-deal Brexit that looms because the government refuses to extend the transition period would devastate them. It is safe to assume, however, that Rees-Mogg himself would not suffer any hardship, just as a lockdown has caused little convenience to his gilded life beyond having to bring his 11-year-old daughter to the Commons office after school because the rest of the family are in Somerset. Indeed, his investment company, Somerset Capital Management, which has already opened a fund in Dublin to serve EU investors, would doubtless find a way to profit from a no-deal Brexit. And we will be covering on that, definitely, because that's, once again, another related to this. But what does this mean for Mogg? Now, let's chart his historic rise. Well, Mogg came massively to prominence during, obviously, the post-Brexit campaign era, predominantly because he hired a PR firm to start hyping him up. And this had a purpose. This was to get him to be Prime Minister, even though, again, he denies it. He was the bookie's favourite. So you might think, well, why didn't he throw his hat in the ring? Well, I've said it before. Brexit is a completely poisoned chalice. Remember when Theresa May got elected? All the Conservatives stood up and then went, actually, no, thank you, I don't want that job, and then ran literally for the hills. Boris Johnson thought that he could use this chance to strike for the gold and be the, quote, Winston Churchill figure that he'd always envisioned himself of being. Turned out not happening at all in any way, shape or form. Once again, Johnson is a vacuous idea man. He has no ideas, and that's why he's keeping Cummings around, because Cummings is the guy with all the ideas. So what better way for Rees-Mogg to, shall we say, disappear quietly for the time being? Because, after all, Brexit may be getting him what he wants, but it's the post-Brexit era, which me and many others who were warned about this during the referendum, about what you're handing over to these people, are potentially worried about. This will be what they envision as a Singapore on the Thames, a land for the wealthy people, and if you don't have money, well, sorry. The problems in this country have been caused by Tory austerity, and people like Mogg are going to accelerate that to unbelievable levels that we just can't fathom at the moment yet. But these are the people that Mogg is championing in the party at the moment. I really do think that once Johnson goes and Brexit is officially done as of like next year, I think you're going to see Mogg try to push himself to more prominence. I think he wants to be the Prime Minister so that he can pass his glorious right wing agenda. And that's what I think potentially is going to happen. I think we will see a Conservative Party led by Jacob Rees-Mogg. I don't think if a lot of what I think potentially happen is you might not see Johnson last this year. I think he could be out by the end of this year. Who knows? We could have another, like I say, next year we could be in another Tory leadership election. But I do not think that the Conservatives are going to allow Johnson to continue on in this. Not only that, but you have, as the article said there, Rees-Mogg's reputation has taken a tanking as well. So you could see him very easily try and get back in the good graces. But the worrying thing is, as you said there, supports 0-hour contracts and pretty much everything that helps the blue-collar workers, which the Tories so desperately had to rely on to win this past election. Brexit isn't going to hurt. Brexit is going to hurt them immensely. So who knows what can happen? But who knows? Hopefully we'll get a Labour government and then we'll hopefully start to sort some of this mess out. But as I've said before, all paths lead us back to rejoining the European Union. It's just a matter of time, and it's going to be, I think, shorter than the Brexiteers seem to think it will be. So, see you soon.